We are doing a full deep dive today on the complete downfall of Erika Jayne from the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills to the courthouse steps. So, we're going to go ahead and break it all down. So, before we get into the lawsuits and the scandals and all of that, we need to start at the beginning, because you cannot understand the downfall until you understand the come-up. Erika Jayne was born Erika Jayne in Atlanta, Georgia in 1971. She was raised by a single mother. Her father left when she was only 9 months old. So, this is a girl who came from humble beginnings, and I want y'all to keep that in mind as we go through this story, because it matters. At 18 years old, she moved to New York City to chase her dreams. She wanted to be a performer. She was auditioning for shows. She was doing little acting gigs. She even played the very first dead body on Law and Order. But dreams don't pay rent. So, to make ends meet, she was dancing at go-go clubs over in New Jersey. Then, she became a DJ at a Manhattan hotspot called the China Club, and that's where she met her first husband, Thomas Zizzo. They got married in 1991 at St. Patrick's Cathedral. They had a son named Tommy, and by 1996, that marriage was over. So, now she's a single mother, a working dancer, and she packs up and heads to Los Angeles to try again. And in LA, she lands a job as a cocktail waitress at Chasen's, which was this famous old-school Hollywood restaurant where all the power players ate. And one of the regulars at that restaurant was a man named Tom Girardi. Now, this is where the story really begins. According to Erika's own memoir, Pretty Mess, she is the one who made the first move. She slipped Tom Girardi her phone number one night in front of the fireplace at Chasen's and asked him, "Did you hear I was single?" The next day, his secretary calls her to schedule a date. And Erika said, "No, ma'am." She told the secretary, "Tell Mr. Girardi if he wants to take me out, he needs to call me himself." And he did. That right there tells you she knew exactly what she was doing and exactly who she was dealing with. At the time, Erika was 27 years old. Tom Girardi was 59. That is a 32-year age gap. Within a few months, she moved into his Pasadena mansion. 6 months after that, he proposed. And according to her book, after they got engaged, Tom told her straight up, "I'll buy you anything you want. I don't care what it is, but I'm not wearing a wedding band. I never have and I never will." Those were his terms. And get this, there was no prenup. They got married in a small private ceremony in January 2000 at their country club with basically 2 witnesses. Now, let me tell y'all who Tom Girardi was, because this part is important. Tom Girardi was not just some rich lawyer. He was the lawyer. This man was one of the most powerful trial attorneys in the entire country. He was the lawyer behind the famous case against Pacific Gas and Electric that won a $333 million settlement for a small California town whose drinking water had been poisoned. Y'all know that case. It became the movie Erin Brockovich with Julia Roberts. That was Tom Girardi's firm. He was inducted into the Trial Lawyer Hall of Fame. He went toe-to-toe with Ford, with Boeing, with the biggest corporations in America. His whole brand was fighting for the little guy, but here's the part that they don't put in the movies. For decades, complaints were being filed against Tom Girardi with the California State Bar. And for decades, nothing happened. Why? Because according to reporting from the LA Times, Tom spent years and millions of dollars cultivating relationships with the very people who were supposed to be policing him. He was wining and dining a state bar investigator at his private club, giving him rides on his private jet, and he even employed 2 of that investigator's children at his law firm. The state bar president at one point was a former lawyer from Tom's own firm. So, the fox wasn't just guarding the hen house, honey. The fox built the hen house, furnished it, and was collecting rent on it. That is how this man was able to operate the way he did for as long as he did. So, now Erika is married to the king of LA law, and baby, she lived like it. She has openly described those years as being in a wealthy coma. Those are her words. She said there are only so many material things you can have before it becomes boring. She had the beautiful home, the black Amex, and a Gulfstream private jet. And when she got bored of being rich, Tom bankrolled her pop career. She created the Erika Jayne persona, started her own record label, hired producers, choreographers, directors, costume designers, a full glam squad, all of it. And in 2015, she joined the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, where she famously told the world she spends $40,000 a month on hair, makeup, and glam alone. She literally had a song called $Expend$, where the whole hook was, "It's expensive to be me." Baby, she was telling us. She was telling us the whole time. And here's the receipt that matters for later. All of that lifestyle was flowing through a company she owned called EJ Global. And where was EJ Global getting its money from? Tom Girardi's law firm, Girardi Keys. Over a 12-year period from 2008 to 2020, more than $25 million flowed from that law firm to fund Erika's career and lifestyle. Her credit card bills, her glam costs, her vendors, jewelry, luxury items, all of it paid by the firm. Remember that number, 25 million. Because it's coming back. Okay, so now we get to the moment everything changed. On November 3rd, 2020, after 21 years of marriage, Erika files for divorce from Tom Girardi. Out of nowhere. And at first, people thought, okay, another Hollywood divorce. He's in his 80s, she's in her 40s, whatever. But then, just weeks later, in December 2020, a bombshell lawsuit dropped out of Chicago. And this is the part of the story that I need everybody to sit with, because this is not just messy reality TV drama. There are real victims here. In October 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 crashed into the Java Sea in Indonesia just minutes after takeoff. All 189 people on board died. Whole families were destroyed. Tom Girardi's firm represented some of the widows and orphans of those victims in lawsuits against Boeing, and they won millions in settlements for those families. But here is the disgusting part. According to the lawsuit filed by the Edelson law firm, that settlement money never made it to those families. The lawsuit alleged that Tom had resorted to embezzling the settlement proceeds that belonged to the widows and orphans of that crash in order to keep funding his and Erika's lavish Beverly Hills lifestyle. A federal judge in Chicago held him in contempt when he could not explain what happened to at least $2 million owed to those families. The judge said it plainly, these are widows and orphans. $500,000 for any one of these families is life-changing. And it gets worse. That same lawsuit accused Erika directly, and it made a claim that had everybody's jaw on the floor. It alleged that the divorce itself was a sham, a fake breakup designed to fraudulently protect Tom and Erika's money from the people trying to collect what they were owed. Now, Erika has always denied that, and she was eventually dismissed from that particular lawsuit in January 2022 and has never been criminally charged with anything. Let's keep that on the record. But the optics? Filing for divorce weeks before the whole empire collapses? People had questions, and honestly, they still do. From there, the dominoes just kept falling. Girardi Keys, this once legendary law firm, was forced into bankruptcy. Court documents showed the firm was more than $100 million in debt. A trustee was appointed to dig through the books and claw back money for the victims. They started auctioning off Erika Jayne memorabilia to pay creditors. Erika had to turn over a pair of $750,000 diamond earrings that Tom had given her because guess what? The trustee alleged those earrings were bought with stolen client money too. Tom Girardi was disbarred in 2022. The man who was once the most feared trial lawyer in America could no longer practice law. His team claimed he had Alzheimer's disease, and a court placed him in a conservatorship under his own brother. And meanwhile, Erika stayed on Housewives filming through all of it, getting grilled by her castmates season after season, dodging questions and dropping lines that became instantly infamous. And whether you think keeping that Bravo check was survival or shamelessness, one thing is undeniable. She never stopped performing. She even launched a whole Las Vegas residency called Bet It All on Blonde while all these lawsuits were swirling around her head. Now, let's talk about what happened to Tom because the receipts here are damning. In August 2024, a federal jury in Los Angeles convicted Tom Girardi on 4 counts of wire fraud for embezzling millions of dollars from his own clients. And during that trial, prosecutors played voicemails of Tom giving his clients a whole spin cycle of fake excuses for why their money hadn't arrived. He told them there were tax obligations. He told them there were bankruptcy claims to settle. He told them judges needed to authorize things. All lies. And on those voicemails, he kept telling these people, "Don't be mad at me. Don't be mad at me. Sir, you stole from widows and orphans." In June 2025, at 86 years old, Tom Girardi was sentenced to 87 months in federal prison. That's 7 years and 3 months. He was also ordered to pay $2.3 million in restitution to his victims and a $35,000 fine. His lawyers argued he had Alzheimer's and wasn't competent, but the judge ruled he was mentally fit to be sentenced, just like she had ruled he was fit to stand trial. He surrendered and started his sentence in July 2025, and just this past March 2026, one of the last lawyers standing at his old firm, Keith Griffin, pleaded guilty to criminal contempt for failing to distribute $7.5 million that was supposed to go to the Lion Air families. So, this wasn't one bad man acting alone. This was a whole machine. And do you know what Erika said about Tom's sentencing? On Housewives, she said, and I quote, "I just kind of hoped he'd die before he'd go to prison, just so he could get it over with." Chilly, that is stone cold. 21 years of marriage, and that is the eulogy. Now, here's where it comes back to Erika directly, because remember that $25 million I told y'all about? The bankruptcy trustee, a woman named Alyssa Miller, filed a lawsuit against Erika, demanding she pay back every dime of it. The exact number was $25,592,261.26. They counted it down to the penny. The trustee's argument was what's called a fraudulent conveyance. And let me break that down real simple, because the legal talk can get confusing. A fraudulent conveyance claim means the trustee can claw back money that was improperly transferred out of a bankrupt company. And here's the kicker. The person who received the money doesn't even have to have known it was stolen. If the court finds the money came from the victims, you can be ordered to give it back, period. The trustee's position was simple. Erika was the beneficiary of all of those payments. She gave nothing in return for them, and her company, EJ Global, wasn't even a real functioning business. The Franchise Tax Board of California found it wasn't a business. It was, in their words, basically Erika's alter ego. Erika's defense, through her attorney Evan Borges, was that she's an entertainer who never worked at the law firm. She had no idea how the firm booked its money, and there's no evidence she knew about or participated in any of Tom's misconduct. And look, both things can be true. She may not have known where every dollar came from, but she also spent 12 years living off money that belonged to burn victims and widows and orphans, and the law says intentions don't erase the receipt. So, this case dragged on for over 4 years. The trustees' team said Erika's strategy was avoid, delay, and obfuscate. Settlement talks broke down completely in December 2025, with attorney Ronald Richards posting that Erika had little options and panic was setting in. The trial got set for February 2026, then it got pushed to May 19, 2026, and the court said in writing, no further continuances will be requested. This was it. She was finally about to face a jury. And then, at the pretrial conference on May 21, 2026, just days before jury selection, the lawyers walked in and told the judge the case has settled. Settled. At the very last minute. The terms are completely confidential, so we do not know how much she agreed to pay or what the deal looks like. But here's the wild part. Erika basically predicted this herself at the Housewives reunion. When Andy Cohen asked her what happens if she loses at trial, she said, "You can fight it out in court, you can cut a deal, or you can die in the streets." Well, tea-sippers, she cut the deal, but hold on because the story is not over. There is another lawsuit, and this one, to me, might be the most disturbing chapter of this entire saga, and it is still active right now as of this month. There's a fashion designer named Christopher Sela. He co-owns a costume brand called Marco Marco, and starting in 2014, he was making all of Erika's stage costumes. All that glitter and sparkle you saw on stage and on Housewives, a lot of that was this man's work. Over 2015 and 2016, Erika's team charged roughly $934,000 across 132 transactions to her American Express for costumes and services, legitimate work according to him. And he has the receipts. Then, in December 2016, out of nowhere, Erika questioned the charges and accused him of overcharging her. And according to his $18 million lawsuit, here is what happened next. He alleges that Tom Girardi paid a $7,500 bribe to a friend of his who just happened to be the head of the Secret Service in Los Angeles. And instead of this being treated like a regular credit card dispute, which is what it was, the Secret Service opened a federal criminal investigation into this man. In 2017, Christopher Sala was criminally charged with wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. Think about that. A costume designer facing federal prison, allegedly because a powerful lawyer made a phone call and slid somebody $7,500. Meanwhile, American Express reversed nearly $800,000 in charges back to Erika and Tom, allegedly without properly investigating anything. This man's business and reputation were dragged through the mud for years. And then, in September 2021, federal prosecutors just quietly dismissed all the charges against him, dropped, gone, after his life had already been turned upside down. So now he is suing Erika, the Secret Service agents, and American Express for malicious prosecution and conspiracy, asking for at least $18 million. Erika tried to get the case dismissed, and the court said no. And literally just days ago, in early July 2026, Erika filed new court documents denying everything saying she never knowingly lied to the Secret Service and was never part of any scheme to target this man. So while everybody thinks the Erika Jayne legal saga ended with that May settlement, no honey, this case is very much alive and admissions from this case were already being used against her in the other one. Watch this space. Now let's talk about the current era because Erika has entered a new chapter, and it's a very interesting one. On this most recent season of Housewives and at the reunion in April 2026, Erika opened up like never before and accused Tom of emotional and financial abuse during their marriage. She said, "I walked on ice a lot with Tom. Looking back at it, it was always the nice." She talked about being in an almost impossible situation swimming under all of these lawsuits. And when asked what one question she would ask Tom, she said, "Why did he throw me out like that?" Now listen, let's keep it real on this part because I want to be fair. A 27-year-old cocktail waitress marrying a 59-year-old man with that much power with no prenup on his terms where he controls every dollar. Is it possible she was in a controlling, imbalanced situation for 2 decades? Absolutely. Financial abuse is real and power imbalances like that are textbook. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that dynamic was healthy because it clearly wasn't. But I also can't ignore the timing. The abuse narrative showed up loudest right as the trials were closing in, right as public sympathy was the most valuable currency she had left. Both things can be true. She can be a woman who survived a controlling marriage and a woman who happily enjoyed 20 years of stolen luxury without asking a single question about where the money came from because that's the thing about willful blindness. You don't ask questions when you already know you won't like the answers, and that brings me to what this story is really about because this is bigger than one housewife. Tom Girardi stole from burn victims. He stole from widows. He stole from orphans whose parents died in a plane crash. These were the most vulnerable people imaginable. People who came to him at the worst moment of their lives, and he took their money and turned it into private jets and diamond earrings and a pop career. And the system let him do it for decades. The state bar had complaints sitting in their files for years and did nothing because he had wined and dined his way into their good graces. That tells you everything you need to know about how these institutions actually work. The watchdogs were on the payroll. And here's my issue with how we consume this story. For years, this was entertainment. The glam room, the $40,000 months, the outfits, the "it's expensive to be me" of it all. We clapped for it. Bravo profited off it. And the whole time, the receipts show that lifestyle was being floated by money that belonged to grieving families on the other side of the world who were waiting on checks that never came. Some of those Lion Air families only got their money because another law firm's insurance stepped up and paid them out of their own pocket, because the idea of those families waiting on Tom Girardi was, in their own lawyer's words, simply unacceptable. Where's the energy for those families? Because I see a whole lot of coverage about Erika's outfits and Erika's comebacks and Erika's residency, and very little about whose money built all of it. At the end of the day, Erika Jayne was never criminally charged. She settled the biggest case against her, and she is still standing, still on TV, still performing, still cashing checks. Tom is sitting in federal prison with Alzheimer's at 86 years old, and honestly, he will probably die in there. The victims waited years for money that was theirs the whole time. And the machine that made all of it possible, the cozy regulators, the enablers at the firm, the whole ecosystem. Most of them walked away clean. Like I always say, the apology means nothing without the system change behind it. Different scandal, different celebrity, same story.